The American Civil War 1861 to 1865 was not only a clash between North and South, it was also a deeply personal conflict that tore families apart. Unlike other wars where enemies came from distant nations, the Civil War often forced brother to fight against brother, fathers against sons, and neighbors against each other. The result was a nation fractured not only along political lines, but along the most intimate lines of family and home. Divided loyalties. The Civil War forced Americans to choose sides, and those choices didn't always align within families. In border states like Kentucky, Missouri, and Maryland, where both Union and Confederate sympathies existed, entire households were split. One son might don Union blue, while another rode with Confederate gray. Even in firmly northern or southern states, personal beliefs about slavery, states' rights, and federal power varied, sometimes creating bitter rifts. Famous examples. The Crittenden family of Kentucky. Senator John Crittenden had two sons. George fought for the Confederacy and Thomas for the Union. The Todd family. Mary Todd Lincoln, wife of President Abraham Lincoln, had several brothers who fought for the Confederacy. These stories were not rare, they were the lived experience of countless American families. Emotional strain and estrangement. For families divided by the war, relationships often suffered irreparably. Political arguments at the dinner table became matters of life and death. Letters were exchanged with caution or ceased entirely. Some family members disowned others over their allegiance. In other cases, silence and sorrow replaced once close bonds. For wives, mothers, and sisters left behind, loyalties could be tested further. Some secretly supported one side while their husbands fought for the other. Women managing farms or businesses alone faced pressures from neighbors who judged their perceived loyalty. The draft and desertion. The implementation of military drafts in both the Union and Confederacy added even more strain. Men were compelled to fight regardless of their beliefs, tearing them from their families. Desertion became a common outcome for those who could no longer bear the emotional burden. Deserters often returned home in secret, hiding from authorities but finding little comfort among divided families who either resented their absence or feared the consequences of harboring them. War in the backyard. Unlike most wars, the Civil War brought combat directly to people's homes. Battles raged through farmland, towns, and cities. Family homes became field hospitals or were burned to the ground. Civilian populations, including women and children, often found themselves caught between advancing armies, sometimes targeted or punished based on their family's allegiance. Union occupation of southern towns and Confederate raids into northern territory turned many civilians into unwilling participants in the war. Families endured looting, forced evacuations, and food shortages, further deepening resentment and division. The pain of loss. Beyond ideological divisions, the war devastated families through death and injury. More than 620,000 Americans died, and thousands more were maimed physically and emotionally. Letters from the front were filled with uncertainty, and many families never knew exactly how or where their loved ones died. For those who survived, the trauma of war often left them unable to return to their old lives. Some veterans suffered from what we now recognize as PTSD, which strained marriages and parent-child relationships long after the fighting ended. Rebuilding, or remaining broken. After the war, many families tried to reconcile. Some succeeded, wounds slowly healed through shared grief, forgiveness, or religious conviction. But others never recovered. Estranged siblings remained apart. Parents refused to speak of lost children who fought for the wrong side. Entire communities stayed divided for decades. In some places, the bitterness of the Civil War lived on in family traditions, stories, and even cemeteries, where Union and Confederate dead were sometimes buried on separate grounds. Conclusion. The Civil War's legacy is not just one of national reconstruction. It is also a story of personal heartbreak. It divided a country, yes, but it also divided dinner tables, letters, and lives. While monuments and battlefields mark the military struggle, the real cost of the war lives on in the quiet, personal histories of families torn apart. Understanding these emotional and domestic consequences helps us fully grasp the human toll of America's bloodiest conflict.